Hello everyone. Hello sir.
Hello, Santoshni.
Sir, one of the salient features of any functioning democracy is supposedly to have a voice in the form of opposition. In this context, what do you think should ideally be the role of an opposition party?
Obviously, Santoshni, as I said, without a strong opposition, there cannot be accountable government. There cannot be alternative options available to the people to bank upon. And even freedom could be in peril. What is happening in our country is whoever be in opposition, whether when UPA was in power, the NDA parties, or when NDA is in power, UPA parties, or in states even worse. Regardless of who is in power or in opposition, the opposition has become a permanent naysayer without any policy analysis. So oftentimes you see people who actually advocated a cause while in government oppose it while in opposition, or what they opposed in opposition, they do in government. And this is compounded by the anti-defection provisions. Basically, even if legislators individually, they're convinced that some policy direction is necessary, if the party takes a stand and gives them a diktat, they are powerless to change it. So we become a loya jirga. So in that context, what do we expect of the opposition? I would say, maybe some people may think it's too good to be true to have that kind of a situation, but that's what we should aim at. Take the current dispensation. Whatever be your political preferences, it is, I think, generally reasonable to say that Narendra Modi government has focused on three things. Infrastructure, unquestionably a lot of push is given, and a lot of results are flowing from that. Investment promotion in order to encourage economic growth, and certain push in certain sectors in particular. We may question specific policy prescriptions, but general direction is very clear and desirable. And fiscal prudence in a poor country, managing the finances, public finances carefully, and balancing the necessary welfare policies in a poor country with the capital expenditure and growth orientation, one of the most important challenges in a democracy. And therefore, you see some amount of growth in the country and there is some confidence. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is right. The failings are not because of a particular government. There is mass poverty in the country. We started off on a very low base, and we continue to be having very low base. We committed many mistakes in the country. And these failings cannot be overcome overnight. So if I were in opposition, and there was a time when I was in opposition as a lone member in the assembly, therefore what I am preaching now is what I practiced, and that's what I believe is the only practice worthwhile in a democracy, is not attack them where they're actually doing reasonably well, but identify the areas which are A, necessary for the country, its future, and where the government either by inaction, acts of omission, or wrong action, acts of commission, is not really helping the cause of the country. Then you tell the people, you persuade the government in the legislature, and you persuade the people out there on the street that this is what is required, this is not happening, and therefore we build pressure to make it happen. And if they still don't do it, then this is my agenda. This is necessary for our collective future. Therefore, you elect me as your servant, and I will fulfill the mandate. This is the role of the opposition. In India, alternative policy formulations, identifying the acts of omission or commission, and even when you criticize what is wrong, and there are many things wrong that are criticized often, coming up with an alternative formulation, how do you set it right? For instance, rule of law has failed in the country at large. States, union, everywhere, we all know that power is abused habitually. Might has become right. Though on paper there is rule of law, in reality, it is those in power that dictate what the police do, what the prosecution does. And ultimately, justice is denied to the bulk of the people. Now, it's not merely individual morality. It's about institutional mechanisms. Go to any country, self-respecting, mature democracy. They built very careful institutional mechanisms and safeguards to ensure A, speedy justice, B, impartial justice, C, accountable justice. So it's efficient, accountable, impartial, and speedy. And therefore, people at large feel that in the society, nobody is above the law, and the law does take care of them. I don't think in India anybody genuinely believes that, including those in power or those in opposition. So when you criticize the government of the day in states of the union about the failure of rule of law, it's a just criticism, fair criticism. If you don't come out with an alternative formulation, all that you say is, all right, let's come to power, I'll teach you a lesson. If that is politics, then it is sad. So what it means is that most of our time and in the media and the legislatures is consumed by the power play. It's a game. Who is in, who is out, who will get into power. It's not about what happens when you're in power. And until our parties, those in power and opposition, discover that democratic government and elected government, they're about what happens once you are in power, because the people of India put you in office. You are accountable to them. The people are the real sovereigns. You are utilizing their money. It's not your money. You are taking power with their vote. They transferred power to you. In part, the power that they have over themselves, they transfer to you voluntarily to promote the public good. That conception, I think, is generally not wholly but substantially missing in our country. And until we discover that, we'll become a very noisy democracy as we are today, but not a very effective democracy in delivering for our people.
Sir, as you have said that, when we talk about opposition parties, currently, what do you think should be a constructive agenda by the opposition party?
I see so much that needs to be done. Let's take the economic growth project today. As I said, I think broadly across the world and in India, most of the thinking people and non-partisan people broadly agree that, yes, India is a growth path. Not because of one government or one day, but cumulatively some good things happen, just as many bad things happen. And there is an accent in infrastructure. There is very high quality fiscal management in a very difficult set of circumstances that actually we must salute the finance minister and the government. At the national level, some impressive work is done in managing that fiscal balance. And a lot of policies are put in place to encourage investment and economic growth. But what is happening is a notion that this is sufficient. It's necessary. All these are necessary. I am all in favor. For instance, in FDR, we are deeply committed to fiscal prudence, because if the government finances are completely damaged, and if all money goes only for the profligacy of the government, temporary palliatives for the people, short-term welfareism at the cost of the long-term good, our growth will be in serious disrepair and India will be a fiscal disaster. We are seeing Pakistan, we are seeing Sri Lanka, Venezuela, many other countries. And one-sixth of humanity, in fact, more than one-sixth of humanity, 18% of the global population. If it ends up like that, it will be a monumental disaster even globally. We can't afford that, the world's largest country. But economic growth and prudent management are necessary but not sufficient. No matter who wins the next election, and everybody believes, perhaps with justification, that Mr. Narendra Modi is going to be Prime Minister again, people of India seem to be inclined towards that. He seems to enjoy significant support base. And in a way, in the next 2-3 months, we'll know. But it doesn't matter who is in power. In my judgment, elections are not about who is elected. Somebody will be elected. That's not the big issue. Elections are about what will happen after the election to us, the people of the country. To me, 4 numbers are very, very important, Santoshni. The first is 82%. That is the share of unorganized workforce in the labor force of India. Out of 100 workers in India, 82 people have no monthly secure wage earning. It's a monumental number. There is no large economy which is anywhere near this. There is no large economy which is even close to 50% of the unorganized workers. Most of the mature economies have about 3-4% unorganized workers. I don't know about China's numbers, probably it may be 15-20% unorganized workers at the most. 82% unorganized workers without a monthly wage earning, without secure livelihood, most of them with low level of skills and paltry incomes. Now, unless slowly but steadily they are all shifted into a formal economy with more secure and highly productive employment and wages, we cannot really improve the quality of life, even if poverty is coming down. Today, in fact, the data came in SSO survey that poverty level has now come down to 5%, which is good news. We welcome it. And poverty levels are measured on a standard basis. You know how many calories you can buy, whether you can buy 2,500 calories for an adult, etc. Therefore, you're comparing the past numbers with the present numbers, which is necessary. But if you actually go into deeper issues of poverty, it will be probably higher. If you measure poverty by more stringent standards, quality of housing, and so on and so forth, it will be much higher. Now, unless we recognize the problems in democratic management and economic management in the medium and long term, we will not be able to safeguard the future. So, first challenge to me is 82% unorganized workers, eking out precarious livelihoods. The second number, incredibly important, is 65% are rural. Again, there's no large economy in the world which has nearly 2/3 of the population still rural. And while we are getting slowly urbanized, our urbanization is incredibly slow and highly skewed, only around big cities. And 1.5 million habitats, 15 lakh habitats, 600,000 villages, classified legally as villages, either panchayats or revenue villages. There is no way you can build infrastructure for so many villages to take care of the needs of these people or build the economy to provide lives and livelihoods in the future. A third number to me that's very important is, even today, 45% of our workers entirely depend on farm sector. Even as the farm sector's income, the share in the national cake is dwindling, as it should. World over, farm sector share dwindles. You take United States, it's only 1 or 2%. Europe, most countries, 1 to 3% max. Number of people employed in farm sector ranges from 1 to 3%, depending on the country. China is probably at 15-18%. We still have 45%, whereas our income from farm sector is only about 16-17%. And income is dwindling as a share of the national income. Absolute numbers are not decreasing, but as a share of national income, income is decreasing in farm sector. But the number of people dependent on farm sector, that's not decreasing to the same extent. And it's a big issue. The fourth is, every year, 13 million people are seeking jobs. They finish some kind of a schooling, some education, they come of age, they're looking for jobs in the job market. 13 million, the world's largest number ever in any country in human history. And we're not able to create jobs and we don't have enough skills. Now, these four numbers indicate both the threat to our democracy and our economy, and also opportunity if you use this opportunity skillfully. Because many things are going in our favor. So if I were in a position, I would argue for the critical issues. There are some big issues will come later. Governance reforms, political reform, money, power in elections, rule of law, decentralization, they're all critical. Leave that aside. The systemic issues and the governance issues, but simple economic management. Our education is bogus in the most part. There is phenomenal demand for education. And my judgment is about 20% of Indians are getting some, not great, but some reasonable quality education. While it's deficient by global standards for many people, you can quickly catch up if you have the will and opportunity. 80%, for no fault of theirs, are getting almost no education worth mentioning. There's enough data, ample statistical evidence, compelling evidence from government sources, from non-profit organization sources, from global surveys. You have enormous amount of data. And yet, we're talking only about building school buildings, recruiting teachers, and conducting examinations, leakage of examination papers, reconducting examinations, mass copying, and inflated grades, all sorts of things. Never bothered about educational outcomes. You don't require to spend a rupee extra. We're already, in my judgment, overspending. For what we're getting as a society, we are overspending. And in any case, about 40-50% of kids are in private sector, and more are joining private sector in education. Not that private sector education outcomes are better. They're better than government, but on the whole, they're not significantly better because the architecture of education is set by the government. The examination system and the minimum levels of learning, the curriculum management is all with the government. It's a disaster what's happening. And the demand side is supreme. Indians, the parents are willing to sacrifice everything for their children. Even their lives, their livelihoods, their income, their comforts for the sake of children. So if only you improve the outcomes of education by making sure that the goal is right, a sensible assessment system without any stress, without mugging up, without rote learning, without mass copying, but application of mind, conceptual understanding, and application of the knowledge and problem solving skills. If you focus towards that, very quickly the whole society will figure out a way. I have not yet seen a single articulate, meaningful address on this subject from any politician or a media person or a bureaucrat or in the media houses debates. Very perfunctory, peripheral, seemingly nice but irrelevant issues are discussed. It's a low-hanging fruit, vital. In this day and age, without giving quality education and skills to be productive in a modern economy, there is no way economic growth can be persistent for long. There will be skills deficit which will actually undermine growth. There is no way that the benefits of growth will actually flow to the bulk of our population. So, to me, it's a no-brainer that the governments don't take up, that the opposition does not argue, is shocking to me. You go to Europe, you go to United States, US, whatever be the other shenanigans of Donald Trump and somebody else, a lot of debate is what is happening to schools, what is happening to children's outcomes, how do you improve the outcomes? Should we have a voucher system? Should we have something else? What shall we do? How do you test? That's overwhelming concern. I have not seen any such concern in Indian public debate. And once you do that, for instance, right, a lot of people have hope. Who are the people who are not getting the skills? Poor families, for no fault of theirs. The children are as smart as in any other family. Just because of the accident of the womb, the poor are denied the opportunities, mostly. Once you give confidence to the poor that you have an opportunity, you now can compete with anybody. Then, instead of dissenters, angry rebels, you have now partners in economic growth, apart from it promoting justice and fairness and equity. Otherwise, you'll have enormous problem on the streets. What's happening? In UP, I heard yesterday or today, 64,000 constables' jobs were announced, notified. 46 lakh people applied. It's all about a few government jobs. There's no job creation, there's no skill promotion in the country. And unproductive government jobs mostly. Police, of course, are necessary. And regardless of how they function, how they deliver, they take away a large portion of the cake. And millions of young children, young kids in the country, they are spending 5-10 years of their life only appearing for government jobs and all these competitive examinations. And then once you get selected, you feel triumphant, you thought you have arrived. Very few actually make a difference later on. Those who are not selected feel their lives are useless, they're depressed, dejected. This is not the way a modern economy is run. The second big issue, if I were in the opposition, what I would like to take up emphatically is healthcare. It's hopelessly underfunded. 1.2% of GDP in the whole country, union and states put together, the government expenditure. One of the lowest, probably the lowest among all large countries, one of the lowest among all countries in the world. And yet, for the money we spend, we are actually getting good results relative to the money spent. While there is that lot that is wrong in government healthcare, still it is delivering better than the money we spend. That means India has phenomenal opportunity. We have a strong pharmaceutical sector. We have a large human resource base, doctors and nurses and health workers and physiotherapists and pharmacists. There's phenomenal demand for them, for those educational opportunities. And lakhs of people are joining these courses, and we are producing them like, matchboxes in a factory or something. Though the skills are somewhat deficient, we can easily set it right. And high-end interventions, some of them, we are best in the world. At the lowest cost, the best quality, comparable to the best in the world. You take coronary artery bypass, you take knee replacement, you take kidney transplantation, you take many other interventions. We're doing supremely well. So there are many opportunities here. We can significantly improve healthcare outcomes if we redesign it at a relatively low cost. We have to spend money. Unlike in education, you need to spend money. but you can do it at a very low cost, get significantly improved outcomes. 50 million people are becoming poor every year in the country for want of health care. And failure of healthcare is the biggest cause of impoverishment of India, causing frustration among the poor and the middle class in the country. Everywhere in the world, even in rich countries today, take Britain, take America, the biggest debates are in healthcare. One of the worst healthcare systems in the world, impoverishing 50 million people in a year. When have we seen serious debate on healthcare in the country? Which opposition party or groups had 1, 2, 3, 4 precisely this is what we'll do differently in order to guarantee quality health to everybody? I find it utterly shameful and bankrupt. Take a third thing, or urbanization. Take the recent election result in Telangana state. It's an amazing wake-up call for the political parties that are willing to listen, if they have eyes to see and ears to hear. Hyderabad city, one of the economic engines of India, one of the top 4 or 5 cities, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Obviously, this way, Kolkata is there, but unfortunately, economic engine-wise, no, it's not in the same league. Now, in 24 assembly constituencies in and around Hyderabad city, people voted one way. To the former governing party, whose efforts to enhance economic growth and build infrastructure were real. There are many things wrong with their functioning, but nobody can doubt this part of it. People voted in favor of that party. I'm sure many of them disliked the government of the day for a variety of reasons, good reasons, but still they held their noses and voted because they saw growth and its impact in their lives. The rest of the state, rural India, rural Telangana, voted differently. So the people are sending a clear message. Even when there is growth, even when right policies fiscally and infrastructure-wise are pursued, the impact of growth is felt only in big cities but not in rural areas and small towns. Now, here is both a threat to the country and an opportunity. A threat because if everybody with minimum level of skills is compelled to migrate to distant big cities without any support system, low level of skills, poverty, no support system, distant migration. Put all this together, you have a disaster happening, a crisis enveloping. During the COVID times, what have we seen? When hundreds of thousands had to go back to the villages in reverse migration because economies got shut down deliberately to prevent the spread of COVID in cities, we have seen how much of pain they endured, how much of hardship they endured. If you are a high-skilled person, you have to go to a big city because there are not enough jobs of high skills in small towns. But if you are a carpenter, an electrician, a plumber, a teacher, or a health worker or something else, why should you be in a big city alone? Where people are, you must find employment, right? So forcing everybody from Bihar, you go to Chennai or Bangalore or Hyderabad. Not that they should not go. People should migrate. But with low skills, you're forced to migrate to distant big cities at low wages, without any support system. They live precarious lives. Most often they are alone because they can't afford to take a family. And they are disconnected from their families. They get very low wages. They have no housing. They have to commute long distances. If one day they don't have employment, work there, suddenly they're in crisis. They don't know whom to call on. And if they're sick one day, there's no support system. There's a human tragedy enveloping our country in big cities. Unless you create small towns, build infrastructure, have proper town planning, have basic amenities, and encourage private investment in housing, enterprises, others, creating small jobs, low-skilled jobs. There is no way you can accommodate these 82% of unorganized workers. And once I am close to my locality, suppose I am from this village, within 10-15 kilometers there is a town developing and I have an opportunity there, I can get a job. I'll get say 20,000 rupees a month or 15,000 a month, which is actually quite a lot in the small town. With that 15,000 you go to Delhi, I mean, what can you do in 15,000 rupees in Delhi? It's not enough for one-room tenement. And long commutes, other things, no, life becomes unbearable. Whereas here, that income is actually enough to sustain some quality of life, and more important, you have support system. You have your own family, friends, network, therefore you're not alienated, you're not desperate. And that is how to create jobs locally, small jobs. That's how to actually bring a large number of people from agriculture to non-agriculture and remove the distance between rural and urban and agricultural and non-agricultural. Integrate them. We have no such model. All our leaders, our obsession is with the big cities, like old-fashioned Maharajas and emperors. If Ashoka was there, Patliputra. If Mughals were there, either Fatehpur Sikri, Agra, or Delhi, or somebody else was there, Roman Empire, Rome. That's okay in the age of empires, but today, unless the effects of growth are spread across a vast continental country like India, and unless you bring growth engines close to the people where they live, a potential disaster is awaiting us. And finally, agriculture. You are seeing what's happening today. Punjab farmers on the street and elsewhere, while the demands of the Punjab farmers are quite unreasonable. They're hurtful to the farmers, and there's no understanding of what needs to be done for agriculture. The problem is real. The crisis farmers are facing in India is real, and the distress that is witnessed in the agrarian sector is real. Now, unless market-oriented policies which actually work with the appropriate safety net for the farmers, MSP is not the answer, it's a disaster. As a special short-term dispensation to tide over a crisis situation, some minimum support price and putting money into people's pockets and government buying is okay. But as a legal entitlement on a permanent basis is a disaster. Because you have to shift your cultivation, agriculture from the cereals, which are now overproduced in India. We are producing 330 million tons of food grains. The real consumption is probably only half of it. And if the industry does not pick up rest of it and some of it, actually we don't know what to do. There's already a glut in the country. At the peak time, government has 80 million tons of food grains with it in the storage godowns. Private sector probably has another 30, 40 million tons in the private storage godowns. So unless you allow the market to work, allow exports wherever exports are possible, give protection from imports. You cannot stop imports when food is required to be imported, like cooking oil. But don't kill Indian agriculture. Give protection to imports so that the price will be withstood. And then eventually we can actually improve productivity and reduce dependence on imports. Compress the market chains, have retail chains so that a lot of money goes into logistics, grading, packaging, storage, transport, processing, retailing. You can open doors for export. Go in for a lot of value addition and go for storage godowns, because price volatility is very high in India. Farmer is compelled to sell when the price is low. A distress sale is very common. And the intermediary is making the profit by price arbitrage because he can hold on to it. If the farmer himself can hold on to the stock when the price is low, and if there is some credit availability because the stock is there, so that he can overcome the crisis, he can take care of the family's needs, he can take care of the next crop. When the price goes up, he can sell. This simple thing we have not created. Our storage is inadequate. So there are a whole range of things utilizing the market mechanisms to make agriculture dynamic and to make farmers more prosperous. And then slowly but steadily improve the quality of life. Farmers, a lot of their distress is because of education and healthcare. Earlier, a generation ago, farmers were not spending money on education and healthcare. 2 generations ago, whatever is available, live or die, we survived. But now we all have ambitions, quite rightly. We want to educate our children, we want to have better healthcare. A lot of money is going out. So if you improve education and healthcare, that itself will be a boost to a rural economy. Out-of-pocket expenditure will come down. And then if you create small towns, slowly you can do agriculture, you can also do non-farm sector work and very close to your locality. And you can integrate both. So you require to really look at all these 4 areas in an integrated manner. They are not isolated silos. For convenience, we're talking about it. But quality education, quality healthcare accessible to people without out-of-pocket expenditure. Small town development so that rural-urban linkages are there. And agricultural transformation. They are all integrated things, interconnected things. There's a whole agenda clearly visible. There's an opportunity. I am deeply saddened that there is so much of political bankruptcy and intellectual bankruptcy that such an agenda we're not able to see. We are personalizing everything. And if we don't address these, whether you're in governing party or opposition, doesn't matter. In power today or tomorrow, doesn't matter. The country will pay a very heavy price. Because right now there is a sense of confidence, which is good. But it will not remain forever. If you leave these monumental challenges of a global dimension, because anything big in India is almost of global dimension. If you don't address them systematically, even if solutions don't come in one day, if there's a path visible, if we understand where we are headed, people feel confident. They participate. We'll improve things. There'll be a virtuous cycle. If there is no path, there's despair, there's a bottomless pit of hopelessness, and you don't see a way out, then we get into a vicious cycle. And if I were in opposition, I would emphatically focus on this, research more, talk to the best people in the country, talk to the people and explain to them what is happening and learn from them and come up with a very coherent, workable agenda, affordable agenda. Whereas unfortunately in India, giving a bad name to economic growth, abusing growth and growth process, abusing investors, provoking jealousy, anger, animosity and hatred, because it's very easy to provoke envy. It's very difficult to empower people and to give them an opportunity to make better lives for themselves. That's hard work. Whereas saying that that fellow who is rich is a bad fellow is a very easy thing to say. After all, who among us is not jealous of somebody having a bigger car, bigger house, better clothes? It's human nature, right? But that's not the job of politicians to provoke envy and anger and hatred. It is the job of politicians to give an opportunity, to give realistic hope. And that's where I think Indian political system is missing an opportunity. And it's going to be detrimental to the country unless we wake up. And if you're in opposition, there's a fantastic opportunity today. And I have not even addressed the governance issues of rule of law, of decentralization, of political parties, internal democracy, making them really hospitable to people's participation, and electoral system. That's a whole lot of other things. Even if that's ignored, simple economic agenda people understand and desperately need. There is so much that is going a begging.
Sir, why do you think that the empirically evident deficits are being ignored currently by the opposition parties?
I think inertia. We are used to doing certain things in a certain way. If you are in parliament or you're in assemblies, there's a way of functioning and you continue with that. You don't question why. Is it working for the country? Is it even working for your party, let alone the country? We don't question. We simply go through the same motions and hope that one day the tide will turn. By a miracle, people will come to me. And when they indeed come to me, I have nothing to offer to them. Therefore, again, they'll be equally angry and the cycle continues. This is what we're used to. The second is, there is no serious search for solutions. Governing a country of 140 crore, 1.4 billion people, and growing, and even today a poor country, relatively speaking, and a very complex and diverse country, is an incredibly difficult task. We have to be humble, we have to listen, we have to think, we have to worry, we have to spend sleepless nights, interact with many, many people who spent lifetimes in understanding the country and its challenges and opportunities, and develop that. It's tremendous hard work. Who wants to do hard work unless you're compelled to do? It's human nature not to do hard work. The third is probably a complete lack of empathy. Politics is seen as a power game. Who is in, who is out. Long ago, one very prominent gentleman in a moment of weakness said, you're talking about India, the people, their future. In the corridors of power, all that matters is who is in and who is out. This notion of power is about some rulers fighting battles, 2020 cricket match. It's not about the people. People are relevant only to the extent that they need our vote. Therefore, how do you somehow manipulate the human psyche to get the vote rather than how do you actually transform human lives? Sadly, that has become, I think, a significant part of our whole thing. It's all about narrative building. It's all about political strategies. It's all about news cycles. It's not about people and their lives and livelihoods and their future. And finally, the political agenda is also in a substantial measure set by the media. Our media is so obsessed with politics as a power game. A 2020, it has nothing to do with the people. There's no other country, to the best of my knowledge, where in the news media, from morning to evening, the airwaves, they badger you with quote unquote political news without anything of substance to touch people's lives. We're obsessed with politics 365 days in a year, not during election time. 365 days a year. I think this tremendous fascination for power as an end in itself, without any purpose, is not merely the politicians failing, it's the news media's failing. And they, in large measure, in democracy, set the agenda. And finally, the people. When you have poverty, when people are desperate, when they are eking out precarious livelihood, there is no time for them to hold the parties and those in government to account. And particularly when the power is centralized, people don't even understand the link between the vote and the consequences. Therefore, the people's voice, even without a formal mechanism to stifle it, is actually stifled. Power is too centralized, too remote. I don't even know what they are deciding, how that's impacting my life. Therefore, political participation is limited largely to election time. Election rallies, you take some money, you take some liquor bottle, and you go and participate. Say Jindabad, Murdabad, ye wo. And then voting day in states like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, where it's all too familiar for us, you take your money and you go and vote for whom you want. But without them paying money, you won't even go to the polling booth. So we have a certain template of politics unrelated to people's participation. Each of these we have to address. While some of them may take time, it's the job of leadership, political leadership, to transcend the immediate circumstances, look at the country's future, and have a heart, and prepare the people with an agenda that is needed. See, there are two elements in politics. One is what people want. People may want money that day. People may want short-term welfareism. People may want spectacles. The other is what people need. The true hallmark of leadership is about going about what do people need. And the great art of governing is how do you combine what people want and what people need, how do you merge them both. I think somewhere a significant number of our politicians and political parties are focusing on what people want. They're ignoring almost entirely what people need, and they've lost the art of balancing this what people want and what people need, and the short term and the long term good. And that does not augur well for the future of our country's economy. I'm a great optimist. This needs to be changed. That's why some of us should speak out with humility, with consistency, and with reason.
So just now you said that there exists a political bankruptcy and intellectual bankruptcy in the current political parties. Could you please elaborate on it?
What we are discussing, why is it not forming part of the public discourse in legislatures and in media? Bankruptcy. Any other country, these are the issues debated. And what are the issues being debated in the country? Almost always irrelevant issues that have no bearing on people's lives, but elevating them to massive spectacles. What is it but intellectual laziness and bankruptcy? I mean, where else in the world do you have people who are actually embracing leadership? Time and again, Indian people have proved, notwithstanding the caste, region, religion, and language and other diversities in the country, if those in power, those in politics, those in political parties actually provide a coherent vision, if they have some credibility in articulating what they articulate, and the people believe that what they are saying has some merit, it will help us, even if they don't understand the detail, the people of India always supported leadership. So people are not a problem. Many other countries, the polarization of the electorate itself, or the anarchy in society, or crime and violence habitual in society, the complete breakdown of social controls, they make the countries ungovernable. Despite being the world's largest country, one of the most diverse countries on earth with 22 languages and all kinds of diversities, Indian people are amenable to leadership. You can see a surge of hope whenever they feel the government or a leader or leaders are doing something right and there is some hope. Time and again you see. And across party divides, across religious divides, across caste divides. Even when the government does something not very smart, If they feel that the government's intentions are sound, they are doing something worthwhile, people always support. Indian people are extremely tolerant and forgiving of their leaders. And even then, if you don't keep the society together, give them a coherent vision, and then move forward, then I think the failure lies in a substantial measure of the political parties and the leadership. It's not the people. It's very easy to say people. Some people say people are taking money to vote. That's because you have not given them anything else credible. Short-term maximization has become the norm in many pockets of the country because the link between the people's vote and consequences to their lives is completely snapped by your centralization, by your incompetence. And now turning around and blaming the people is the height of cynicism and hypocrisy. So people of India, despite all our weaknesses, and there are weaknesses, inadequate understanding of democracy, poverty, illiteracy, there are problems. But they are created by those in governing classes. And two, despite that, people are amenable to leadership. So we have a fabulous opportunity. I'm a great optimist for that reason. And India is well placed to really take advantage of the current situation, provided the threats are understood and they're managed. Otherwise, each of these threats will become a grave danger for the country's future, economically, socially, and politically.
So, like just now you said that in mature democracies, the issues on which debate is held is different from what is happening in India. Do you think we'll ever reach that stage?
Absolutely. I have no doubt about it. See, even in this country, how come some leaders in some pockets, either in a state or a local government, sometimes in the country, they achieved remarkable things? See, whenever some sincere effort is made by leadership, oftentimes political, sometimes even bureaucratic. We have seen some civil servants in small pocket in their sphere of domain, the domain of influence. When they actually did the right things, the response that the people gave them. So time and again, there's compelling, conclusive evidence to show that the people always respond if you create the right kind of framework and incentives and you have the credibility and you lead. So the failure is that of leadership. Indian people are ready. I have no doubt whatsoever.
So, do you think political parties would be ready to reach that stage?
I am optimistic because a lot of bright young people are joining political parties. Sadly, because parties are autocratic, they're not allowing the rise of competent people. It's always pedigreed people by virtue of your parentage or money or networks and caste. But there is some evidence to show that some bright young people are now allowed to get in, but they're not yet given enough power or say. They're just more pretty faces for the parties. But if these people assert within the parties, and the second is India is, while it's not sufficiently urbanized, at least in urban India, the middle classes, they are paying taxes even at local level, and they understand the value of governance. If they start asserting increasingly, then I think the parties will be forced to change, become more democratic, and come up with an agenda, a coherent agenda, and alternative agendas. After all, what is the function of political parties? There are 4 functions. One is, if you, Santoshni, want to play a role politically, that is your right, after all, right? In a democracy, we want people to play a role in politics. So, political party must function as a platform for participation of people. You become a platform, a real legitimate platform, not a notional platform, whereby a Santoshni can join. If she has good ideas, if she has passion, she can persuade the fellow citizens and rise in the party ranks through ethical and rational means. Not by bribing, not by using caste, not by offering short-term freebies, but genuinely ethical and rational means. That is what the first function of the political parties is. The second function is you have to ensure that there is a genuine alternative available in terms of agenda. If something is happening, this is good, then I support it. If that is bad, this is what needs to be done, this is the agenda. So you come up with a coherent agenda. The third is then you persuade the people with that agenda and with these ideas. And fourth is once the people give you the mandate, you sit there and deliver on the mandate. We have forgotten all that. There's only one agenda today. I must be in, not even power, there is power in most cases, in that position. Kissa kursi ka. I must be on that chair, in the position. That became an end in itself. Power without purpose. As Mahatma Gandhi said, he said, politics without principle. But power without purpose is a great sin. That has become endemic now in almost all parties in the country at almost all levels. That is the central issue. And unless that purpose is rediscovered, political parties, the leadership, top leadership, unless it sets an example, it's going to be difficult. But I'm optimistic because of the two factors. The urbanization, at least limited though it is, now people are asserting and upset. If you channelize it constructively. And some bright people, they really want to play a role in India's transformation. If we give space to them, I think it will happen. If the leadership understands and embraces it, it happens quickly. Otherwise, it will happen slowly and painfully.
Thank you, sir.